Rob Calhoun from Wurm Flesh and Arachnid Cabinets. How you doing, brother?
Dude, doing great. This morning was hectic getting to work, man. 2 accidents, and that's California traffic in Sacramento for you.
Yeah, man, it's rough down there. Even going, 2 hours worth of distance turns into 4 hours worth of driving in the lease, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, no, it can turn that way.
So, dude, you're in the band Wurm Flesh. You play guitar and you sing, and you're also part of Arachnid Cabinets. Let's start with your band. Wurm Flesh was inactive for a while. It seems like you guys came back playing that brutal death metal, dude. You have a new song out. I watched the video. It's killer. Talk about that.
Oh, man. So Wurm Flesh started in 2014. I guess technically sooner than that, but I consider it only really starting when I got a drummer. So it's been Mitch and I since the inception of what I really officially call the band. Oh boy, it took a couple years to at least get a couple of members going. I started the band doing vocals out of necessity because I couldn't find a front man, and I didn't have anything professional to show people. So the guys who are really good were like, I'll pass, bro. And I started doing it out of necessity. And from there, ended up getting my best friend, an old frontman from Siphon Soul, to front the band. And then a bunch of issues happened with him. Life hit him. And then we got Drew Winter, who was in Shadow Colossus, the original vocalist for Conducting from the Grave. And then he had some life issues come up as well. 4 kids, life hits. And I had to go back to doing vocals. So between our first album that we dropped, we only had about a year to support it, man. Then COVID hit. And then we had a couple members who lived with family, and then they were worried about getting sick, so rehearsals were kind of hard. I was finishing school, getting my AS in mechanical electrical technology to become a stationary engineer to help fund both Arachnid and Wurm Flesh, and had a couple member changes and lineups that kind of just puts a damper in making progress with writing, dude.
Absolutely, man. And COVID was bad enough, but like just life in general, trying to keep a band together, that's a feat in itself during normal times. And like, I think we can all relate to like trying to find people. And I mean, I experienced the same thing with necessity, like, programming drums and all that. So I totally get it, dude. But your guys' new track is pretty slamming, man. Where'd you guys record that at?
So there's a gentleman by the name of Robert Swanson. He goes by Bob, though. Down Mahimna Studios, which is literally in the same facility we rehearse at. So it's called SAC Rehearsal Studios, and that's where our buddies Gabe and the Decrepit Birth guys rehearse as well. A lot of kind of local legendary bands have rehearsed out of SAC rehearsals. It's congested as fuck, and what I mean by that is if you need a spot and you want one, it ain't quick to get in there. So it's actually really nice. Bob is literally like 2 halls from our room. So when we have to go record, take drums, it's literally quick breakdown, dolly everything over, roll the cabs over, set up, record. So it's not hard. It's convenient. And he's great. So
dude, you can't beat that, man. I mean, right down the hall, like, drummers always complaining they got to move their stuff, but it's right down the street. That's awesome. And you talked about cabinets. Arachnid are great cabinets. I had a chance to play them at NAMM this last year.
Yeah.
And they were great, man. And Gary was there, and I think Sammy was as well. Really cool. And so when you guys did your recording, then you guys actually mic'd those cabinets, so you didn't use any plugins.
Actually, we did a blend of both my physical cabinet and the impulse responses of my cabinets. So, you gotta, in order to move forward, you have to kind of step into the digital world a little bit. And I've been working with Stephen Ward, who was with Neural DSP for the last 5-6 years. He's the one capturing all the impulse responses for my cabs. And we literally caught my personal cabs, or captured my personal cabs. And we did a blend of an impulse response of my cabs plus my physical. So yes, you're hearing Arachnid cabs on this track.
That's awesome, man. And it sounds crushing and it's articulate. I guess it's kind of like you're saying, like embracing technology, best of both worlds with the clarity and the definition of the plugins, but also the movement of the air of a cabinet. So it's really warm, but it also has really great articulation. And that's one thing about Arachnid I'd say is those cabinets sounded like were super articulate, especially the 212 cabinets are great.
Yeah, I've been a really big fan, and I've had a lot of people ask me, oh, what program and software did you use to design your cabs? I really didn't. I just kind of looked at what was out there size wise, and I went with my own spin on sizing. So, your typical standard metal cabs are all 30 by 30, but only 14 inches deep. I went an extra inch deep. So my cabs are all like 15, but, I'd also have to say that, our clarity comes from our tuning as well. Even though we play sevens, my B on top is natural, but I actually up-tune the first 6 strings a full step to F sharp standard. So
wow.
I'm actually I'm actually up-tuned for a 7 if you want to think about it in that realm. We are playing at 432 hertz, so it's a bastardized, flattened of that, but we are up-tuned with our guitars, believe it or not.
Wow, that's unique, dude. I've never heard I've heard of people tuning higher, but I've never heard of that like on a 7-string, dude. Like, like a Telecaster maybe, or like a Strat, but not on something crushing as that. But no wonder it cuts. I mean, it sounds killer.
So I was doing drop E on 6s for forever, but in order to keep the guitar balanced, you'd have to go with these higher gauge strings. You'd have to do a ton of adjustment to the truss rod. And I played Floyd Roses, and that became a nightmare with 6s. All that extra setup work on 6, where the 7, that B is already there. That's the natural tuning of the 7th string. So it's a lot quicker to set up the neck, the truss rod, and the Floyd Rose to get into that tuning than it is to, down tune a 6 several steps.
Oh, it makes sense, man. Like, I remember back in those days too, like playing a 6-string tune to B and, B standard and stuff. And I was totally against like getting a 7-string guitar. I'm like, 6 is enough. I don't, it's going to mess me up all the stuff I memorized. But I mean, way to embrace it though. And so, to do something like that's really cool, man. Hell yeah.
I was, so when I was doing Siphon Soul back in the day with the original, I guess I'm the original vocalist, so to say, but when we had a dedicated frontman, our first original dedicated frontman, Richard, when we were doing Siphon Soul, the only bands you saw really using 7s were like Korn. Jeff Loomis was playing on 7s with Nevermore, or it was like all deathcore stuff. The 7 seemed gimmicky at first. And I remember they initially were like, we should go to 7s. We're drop tuning all this low. We should go to 7s. I was like, no, they're gimmicky. They're like, those 7s are lame. There's no need for. I was vehemently against going to 7s. I thought that's really what I thought they were. I thought they were a gimmick. And then I got more mature and wiser and found out that they would be a better tool for the tuning.
Absolutely, man. And like, I remember seeing like Morbid Angel, playing them and Cannibal Corpse and stuff. And that's when I was like, whoa, like these sound crushing. And it's, I'm big on articulation, but it just sounds better, man. I mean, plain and simple for low tunes.
Yeah. You're right. I'd say when it came to brutal death metal and extreme metal, Trey playing that 7-string, I think I saw some live footage at Vakken when they were playing like Where the Slime Lives and God of Emptiness. And I think it was for Where the Slime Lives. And I've been Eric Rutan, and Trey had both a 7-string Warrior, and I'd only seen 7-string Ibanez's and Schecter. So when I saw that Jackson has 7-string, I was like, what? Okay. And Trey's playing it, and Eric Rutan. Okay, maybe I'm sold a lot more now.
Oh, for sure, dude. And what kind of guitar are you playing right now?
So right now I have an E2 Aero 7 out of Japan, man, because you can't really find them in America anymore. So they're all over the Japanese market, but they're getting highly expensive the more you go. I remember when I was first looking at one, it was about $1,800 on Reverb. And then the second time I saw one, they were going up to $2,000. I stacked mine for about $2,300. I'm glad I did, because now they're all like $3,000 and higher when I see them. So
I have I had an NV Standard, like with the John Gallagher model with the iron crosses and a Kaler and all that stuff. And I'm a killer guy. Yeah, and I sold it because I sold it and I shouldn't have, and I pretty much gave it away. But you're right, dude. Those E2 Aeros are getting super expensive, and it's crazy. Like a lot of guitars that were like $600 or $700, now they're like $1,500 to $1,800. It's crazy,
dude. And they're not even. So I initially wanted to get one of those Ironbird MK27s that BC Rich were coming out with. And my only gripe with those were they didn't have original Floyd Roses for the price point. But then BC Rich couldn't get their act together and get them into Sweetwater. And so I literally was like, when should these be in? It was around my birthday. My wife said, yeah, you can get it. And then here came September, they weren't in stock. Then here came October, they weren't there. Then here came November, December, and then January. And then I saw an E2 pop up on eBay, new from Japan. And I was like, babe, this is kind of what I want to get. These things are super rare. Every time they pop up, they're only getting more expensive. Can I pull the trigger? And she's like, yeah, if that's what you need or want, go ahead.
Well, that's awesome, man. Your wife sounds like she's a cool lady. That's how chicks should be, supporting the guitar playing and everything like that. I mean, they usually do, but that's awesome, man. Hell yeah.
Oh, I had to be a slave. Don't worry. I had to do like all the cooking for like 2 weeks and the laundry, and there's some stipulations, but no, my wife is actually super supportive. Believe it or not, the shop you see behind me, before it was a dedicated wood shop, housed our 64.5 Mustang, and she let me have the shop to do Arachnid, and we built a carport in our RV driveway. We don't have an RV, but that's what they're for technically. So we built an awning, and the classic kind of remains somewhat protected from the elements and somewhat sheltered. So we just give it a wash down every week or two, and then but she literally let me have the shop. So
that's rad, dude. So what was the inspiration for you to start Arachnid Cabinets? Like, where did that come from?
Oh man, probably when I was 17 and I was starting to get really good at guitar. I was kind of like your typical California skateboarding kid, turned California, guitarist, whatever. We moved out to Oklahoma because my parents are military, and the weather just made it impossible to skateboard. So I just started getting better at guitar. And cabinets were really expensive. And my grandpa was a clockmaker. My dad's a gunsmith. So I was around tools like growing up most of my life, and building skateboard boxes. I was like, you know what? I built skateboard boxes before. Maybe I could build a cabinet. So like 17, I built my first speaker cabinet. It's a little 112. And then I never revisited the idea. It wasn't until, I don't know, I moved back out to Sacramento. I started playing music live for the first time, really, because in Oklahoma, there was no one to play with. So when I moved back out to California, I just focused on playing music. That's all I wanted to do. I was like, I want to play music. And then one night I was like, I kind of want to do something more in the scene than just be a musician. I want to be a little bit more important. I want to try to help put us on the map if I can't do it musically, because death metal isn't a sexy selling point for most cities. But I thought, I would like to do something a little bit more involved. And I revisited the idea of doing speaker cabinets in 2012, about 2012. And I think I found some photos going back to my first prototype. I think I was starting the dovetail process and practice that around like 2011, 2012. I built the first prototype around that time, same year. So I've been doing it for like 12 years.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And like I said enough times, but Arachnid is awesome cabinets. And they sound like, I've only had experience playing the 212 ones, but they kind of sound like you were talking oversized. Like it's got a lot of low end, like the Jens Benz ones had. In the Vader cabinets, man. And that's kind of like, I'm not to compare. I mean, everything's different.
Oh, I love Adam, dude. Feel free to compare. I love Adam, dude. He, quick anecdote, when COVID first hit and he wasn't doing Vader still because he'd already closed up shop, he flew out to this shop and helped me set up the programming for my CNC machine. He probably helped me save 3 years on the learning curve. But yeah, I love Adam and Vader, dude. So don't ever trip on the comparison. Was a huge inspiration of mine. So
that's awesome, dude. And that's kind of like how music is too. People help each other. And it's nice to see that, it transcends just a playing thing. Like you said, like went out and came down and helped you guys out and, put you on the right path there. And that's really cool. And I mean, that's another testament to your quality of your guys' cabinets, because, people like that aren't going to associate with you unless they believe in what you're doing. So that's great, dude.
Yeah. And I think the balance is not making the cabs too big. I see a big trend with 212s where everyone is trying to make them basically 2/3 of what a 412 is. And there's a balance between that airspace. A bigger cabinet doesn't necessarily always sound bigger. And and there's a lot of science behind the speaker choices you should use with you're gonna make them that big. But you know, most of my market is metal guys, rock guys, gent dudes, and death metal. And I just found out my sizes from trial and error have produced punchy low end, and that's articulate still. And I just built them the way I'd want to sound. Like, what would I want for my tone? And these things sound great with even 8 and 9 strings. Like, still don't get me wrong. They'll sound great, but I still thought about, well, death metal should be articulate. The low end should be articulate. The thing about the 8 and 9 strings is sometimes that gets into a bass territory where it's hard to hear articulation within the first 5, 6, 7 frets, but it's not impossible. But I wanted to make sure the cabinets could suit those guys as well. So
nice. So it's designed to fit a wide variety of instruments and a wide variety of styles of extreme music and aggressive music nonetheless. And what kind of speakers are your speakers of choice in, like, in your basic model 212 cabinet or any cabinet? What do you guys roll with?
So what I consider the Arachnid tone, like what most people have heard that sold them on the company, is a set of Texas Heats and Man Awards from Eminence. I do offer Celestian Vintage 30s at the same cost, but when I was a teenager, you know, Metalocalypse came out, and Deathclock were endorsed by Crank at the time, and the Crankstein cabs were the ones they used with dime silhouette on the little badge in the bottom right corner, and those were loaded with Texas Heats. And because of that cartoon and their association with Crank, and being a nerd, I said, those are the speakers I would want for my genre of music and what I would want to play personally. And that's why I gravitated towards Eminence at first. And that's really the story of where it came with the speaker choice.
Hey man, it's a good story nonetheless, and it's legendary. And how could we not be influenced by stuff like that? I mean, that's what metal's all about, right? Is the details and the nerdy stuff. But, like, you know, those Texas Heat speakers, I find that Eminence, I like the way they sound. Like, Celestians are good, don't get me wrong, and there's good stuff for everything. But I don't really like the breakup that they have, where I like more of the cleaner sound than something that's got like a lot of the mid-range kind of like snarl to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so when I got Gary on board after Sammy, because Gary literally came on board after Sammy came on board, so I have to really thank Sammy. You know, Gary was like, "Why don't you use Celestians?" And I said, honestly, they've never approached me, and I don't feel comfortable approaching them. They seemed a little bit out of my league to talk to, and I don't know why I had that kind of hang up. But Gary's like, let's change that. And he got me in contact with Rick Skillman over at Celestian. And Rick was very cool. Rick was like, dude, sell both. No reason to turn down a customer because you can't offer one over the other, and and still give them, still give them something within your price range. Because he understood where I was coming from. I said, well, if I put Celestians in my cabinets, those are $150 each, man. I mean, that's double for what I put for Eminences. And he said, let the ponies play. Carry us, carry Eminence, offer both. So I've had a really great relationship with Celestian as well. So
yeah, man, that's great, dude. That's really cool. So everybody wins on that one. You guys are able to provide speakers in your cabinets to people that want that, and that's really cool to have some diversity, a little variety too, because that's a classic tone, especially somebody like Gary coming from, predominantly probably Marshall stuff, especially early in the career, to have something that translates just as well into something that is that legendary means it says a lot, dude.
Yeah, and that's just the thing about speakers and tone. It's all subjective. I think there's objectively things that we know are universally good sounding. There's objectively things that sound good, but then there are those little nuances that are subjective. Like, I feel they break up at this point. They're harsh in this level. When I'm playing these tunings, they sound muddy. And those are all the subjective things. So, like in Wurm Flesh, the tuning, the 432 hertz thing, that throws everyone for a loop when I talk about that. And But you know, well, at the end of the day, I say, does it sound crushing? Does it sound like we're super low tuned and brutal? They're like, yeah, then we're doing that's doing its job. What you may subjectively think isn't good, you know, is objectively doing the job.
Well, there you go, dude. And I was going to ask, like Sammy, I saw an advertisement on your guys' website, or an advertisement that I saw on your guys' website, that he was using the EVH stealth heads, but he was using like the Marshall looking ones, I do believe. Like, and that sounds really great too with your guys' cabinets.
So Sammy now, I think him and Michael are still tweaking some little things, but he's now got a signature amplifier coming through Michael Klein.
Oh, wow.
So most of the tours that you've seen Sammy on, he's rocking the Michael Klein amplifiers, which I'm also making the head shells for, because Michael thought, well, you built Sammy's cabs, I think the heads should match the cabs. So so a lot of what you're hearing from Sammy is, I believe it's a mutt between one of Sammy's favorite Marshalls and like one of his favorite Randalls, like a V-Max or something like that. And right now, the final tweaks on his amplifier, from what I've been told, is Sammy doesn't want you to have to use an overdrive pedal in front of it. He thinks they're both in the same boat, that if you're paying $2 to $3 grand, whatever Michael's pricing at, please don't quote me, everyone, but whatever they're pricing it at, they feel at that price point, you shouldn't have to buy another $1,000 of pedals.
You know, and that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, when you're spending that kind of money, you know, you should have the tone that you want, especially nowadays with what's available and this and that. So that's really cool that they're keeping the customers, the consumer in mind, the guitar players, people that are actually going to use their product. And what do you prefer, though? What is your amp that you like to use?
All right, so I'm using a hybrid of both new digital and tube. So I have a HX Stomp. So basically, it's the Helix, Brain, and DNA, just an HX Stomp. I am a one flavor tone to rule them all guy. I don't have like this tone for this song, this tone for that. It's turn the shit on, let's go. But it's an HX Stomp through a BBE Maxcom, because I love the maximizer. It's got a little bit of I got a compression section on it and a little gate section, all through an Angle E840 power section.
Oh, nice, man. Hell yeah. Angle's good stuff. The power amps, especially. I mean, that's like the classic, I mean, not like, you know, obscure and necrophagous kind of sound. Like that's like what they were rocking.
It's that German high gain engineering, man. And
yeah.
I've been emulating an Angle preamp, because I hate saying amplifiers with the digital world, because they're really preamps. You still need a power section to make these things project into a cab. Right. So I've been using the Angle mods on the Helix for forever. And then there was a sweet deal on Reverb for the E840. A guy wanted $1,200. There were these suggestions like, ask for 20% off or 15% off. I said, well, if Reverb's going to suggest it, I'm going to do it. So I like hit the 15% off button. The guy accepted my offer. So I got this thing. Guy said he played it for 1 hour. I got for like $1,200 after shipping and taxes. So I got for like 10 something, shipping and taxes, $1,200 out the door. And those things are like $1,800.
Oh, so, yeah, man. It's super rare too.
Yeah. So hats off to the guy on Reverb who let it go for super cheap. You know, I had to explain that. That was one of the ones with the wife. I had to beg for forgiveness and permission. I said, but babe, if I'm going to eventually going to buy it, and would you rather me spend $1,200 after shipping and taxes or $2,000?
Exactly. You're saving money. You're looking out for everybody's best interest.
I am.
You're getting some sweet gear. You can't beat that, man. That's awesome. And that's good stuff, dude. So like when you run your Helix, you run through like just through the power amp. Is that what you're doing, and like bypassing the preamp?
Oh no, so it's just a 2-unit rack power amp. So there's it's got an onboard gate, it's got an onboard gain stage. It's got like 2 onboard gain stages. So it's a 2-unit just power amp, no preamp section whatsoever. And the way it goes is basically the Helix or HX Stomp into the BBE Maxcom, into the Angle E840. And then I throughput through a 2 Notes Torpedo Live to go into Jab Live. So I have a physical cab on stage for live monitoring, and then I send front of house the IRs of the cab you're actually listening to us play live. So they're sending basically a studio quality mic'd cab through their PA, but there's also the live cab as well. So I'm mixing the best of both worlds.
Nice, man. And that sounds like it's a really good setup. And it's, it's got, like you said, the best of both worlds covered. And I think the last tour I did, I just used a 6505 Plus with the Kemper floorboard just through the power amp and mic to cabinet and gave him a direct out from it. So it works, but it's definitely like the 2-note stuff is great too.
Yeah, and I went from a rack helix to a floor helix, but then the setup time was becoming really obnoxious because I'm the vocalist, and then I have this ego riser that I built that has a computer in it and a monitor that I loop an active video through. So,
oh, wow.
And then I'm the sample guy as well. So I had an iPad on my mic stand. So I'm up there, and then our mixer for in-ear monitors. So I'm our sound tech, vocalist, guitarist, and I'm doing all of that. And then the floor helix was just taking up too much time to set up. So it's like, I need a smaller footprint so it could stay in my rack unit at all times. But if we get a festival opportunity and we need to fly out, I could rip it out and throw it in a backpack and be done. And that's what me and my other guitarists are doing right now is we're building what we call backpack rigs. So if we can fly out, I'm probably going to get a little floorboard. I'm going to probably get the pedal version of the 2-Notes Captor X. I'll probably get a BBE maximizer pedal to take over the sonic maximizer section of my rack unit. And I don't know if I'll just throughput the effects section of whatever amplifiers they're providing live, or maybe I'll put on a Seymour Duncan power stage or something. That's kind of up in the air, but that's what 2025 is gearing up for. Is we're putting together a flight fund because you can't realistically make tours out of every festival run, so we need to be able to fly out. So,
oh, absolutely, man. And on my experience, I used a Sansamp Paul Lander little iFly rig, and that thing was pretty cool. And I just ran that through front of the house and like, into your carry-on, dude, and you're good to go. So like having a rig that's going to sound like what you normally play, but man, that's going to be really nice.
Man, our bassist has it so easy. Like, don't get me wrong. He's he bought a Hartke amp, but he's got the same, like those Sans amps for bass players just sound so good out the gate. They're so lucky with their stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's bassists out there that are picky. They would need a lot. But our guy, he's just like meat potatoes. As long as it's got a little gain and I can play clearly, I'm cool. So he could travel with the Sans amp. Our tones are a little bit more unique. I think because of the cabinet company, I'm still trying to somewhat represent the product. Hence why I need a Captor X or something to send Arachnid IRs to whatever front of house. Just at least so there's some continuity between my company and what the audience is hearing. I don't care what's being monitored on stage or what they're sending the tone to on stage. As long as I can hear it and I can do vocals and play. But the audience, I want them to know that you're hearing our stuff through Arachnids, quote unquote, however that may be.
And that makes sense, man, because you're out there, every performance that you guys have, you're promoting your product.
Yeah.
And that stands to reason, dude. And it sounds good. And if it's working for you, man, then there you go, and are you running a 412 cabinet or are you using a 212 cabinet? What's your configuration?
Oh, man, we are breaking our backs, bro. We're using 412s. And Joe and I, that's my other guitarist. So what we've talked is once we combine rigs and we're not having to stick anything, let me back that up. We're talking about combining the rigs because the Angle has 2 separate 50-watt power sections. And he's thinking he's got to get an HX stomp of some sort too for his fly rig. So when we combine everything into one big rolling rig and we free up the space on our cabs, we've talked about for headlining shows, pulling out full stacks and shit like that, going the distance with, because I have four 412s because I backline festivals as well. There's just something that looks rock star metal as shit as, full stacks as much as the new generation says, oh, smaller, more compact. There's still something rock and roll about a full stack behind you.
Oh, dude, absolutely. And when you can hear or feel the air moving, and it's cutting your head off, there's something to be said for that. And that's what made us want to play guitar when we were kids, is just that crushingly massive tone. And like you said, the aesthetics there back on festivals, totally understand. So there's something to be said for that too. Like, it's kind of hard to feel music as somebody on stage when, you know, all you have is it's in your in-ears or whatever the monitor is in front of you sometimes too. Cause I've done that too, where I played with nothing but just, you know, without any sort of backline and everything just going through front of the house and in my in-ears. But man, having a good cabinet, being able to hear everything and feel it, that inspires performance, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was using a EV monitor for my monitoring, and then what happened was I recently ditched it to go back to in-ears, only because we played this show in Fresno. We're doing like a 4 or 5 show run. Fresno, Long Beach. We were in Vegas for 2 days, so 1 fuck off day, 1 day playing, and then we went to Arizona, came home. Well, the first show was in this brick skate warehouse, and the reverberation just fucking killed our ears. I kind of blew out my voice. Luckily, I was able to perform every night, but I basically couldn't talk throughout the day. So I said, I need to go back to in-ears. So I went with these ASI 3D ME in-ears that actually have active microphones, so I could pick up ambient room noise now.
Oh, wow. That's killer, man. That's awesome.
So you don't feel isolated anymore, because that's the biggest problem with in-ears. You're at a rock and metal show. It sucks to not hear the audience or to hear them muffled. It sucks if you have to talk to your bass player, guitarist about something like, do you need water? And then you're pulling stuff in and out of your ear. These things, man, the coolest thing is, like I said, they have ambient microphones built in. You can set a safe listening threshold. So I set the 80 dBs. So it'll never allow ambient noise over 80 dBs into my ears, because 86 is where you start ruining your hearing. So they've given me the best of both worlds. So now I have in-ear monitors, and then I now have a way to stay connected to the audience, even with them.
Having the ability to monitor with the microphones in your in-ears is pretty cool. Like, that's the one thing I don't like about them too, is they are isolating. If you do feel like you're alone, you know, you don't get to hear anything other than, like, if you're running a click or whatever, or even a backing track or something like that. That's all I'm getting. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And that's actually something we're all going to in-ears finally. We're going to play to a click. Something we've been talking about for a long time, because even the click with the, you know, just being slightly buried, you know, it'll help keep continuity in the show, make sure everything stays up to par. We have samples that are also in the middle of the show that would be a lot nicer if we had a tempo map, plus, you know, the click lined up to that tempo map, to just play automatically front of house. And I'm super nerdy, bro. I probably do things the hardest way possible. But I bought 2 RC5 loop station pedals, which I'm not using for the looping ability. I'm using for the memory banks. So I have 2 of them that plug into the radial RD2 DI box. So I have them both lined up properly in Audacity. One, oh my God, I guess, let me back up. And I have a Boss FS7 foot switch. When I hit the pedal, it plays both of them. One goes to the front of house with just the sample. The other goes to our IEM mixer, but not only the same sample, but the click track.
Right.
So I'm using 2 RC5 loop stations as memory banks with an FS7 foot switch to not only bank up through both pedals as we change the songs, but also to play 2 separate tracks in parallel. But, you know, obviously one the FOH, one the IEM. So my drummer's like, well, let me control it. And I love Mitch to death, but he would speed through the set like a motherfucker if you'd let him.
Right. And I get that.
Next song.
Right, exactly. We'll just keep rolling through, like the Slayer way, just hammer them all out. And like the in-ear monitor thing, like you're talking about, and let somebody else control it. Because you were talking about how you're doing everything now. So is that why you're running the loop pedals? Is that why you don't have to use a laptop next to you? You can just
I don't have to have an iPad. I don't have to now touch a sample and like mute my guitar real quick to play for a mid-song sample. Because my drummer, I can hear him all the time. If I'm like talking or saying something anecdotal, he's, come on, let's go. Like he yells it at me. So I'm like, man, if I gave this dude control of the samples, no one would have a breather. at least up front, I can look at Bo. Bo can be like, I need water. I can look at Joe, etc. See if anybody needs water. I can get a water break, or I use like a throat coat thing in between songs, so the songs start when I'm ready to go. So it's not to be selfish, but it's like when you're up there being the vocals and guitars, you can't wind yourself too early. So.
Oh, absolutely not, dude. And any modicum of control you can have over your show. And I use the RC5 to do or was it RC5? Yeah. An RC5 to do a tour with Rings of Saturn. And I just played the backing tracks, and that's all I had was a positive grid rig, small little thing, a Biosamp Mini. I had that, and I brought I had a Vader 212 cabinet if I wanted to use it, and the RC5, dude, and I would just run it like that, and it was super easy. I made one trip on the stage, off the stage, so those pedals they're worthwhile, man. They do a great job.
Yeah, and they 99 memory banks, 1,300 hours or something of wave formatted like capabilities. Like that's a lot in a little $200 pedal. There's a lot of cool little features you have to dig for. Like you have to make sure that once you play the track that it's called one shot, so so it doesn't just repeat the loop. And like I said, the Boss FS7 little foot switch for it, I love it. It's just an A and B pedal in one compact form, 1 unit size. And dude, so the pedals themselves, the stomps on each RC5 are programmed to bank back down to track 1 or memory bank 1. I have B set up to play both pedals simultaneously, and I have A that'll bank up through the memory simultaneously. And like I said, I just splurged on a Radial RD2 DI box that has both a left and right input, their own individual ones. So I only need one DI box, etc. So just you gotta be, I don't know, if you want to put on a killer show and you want to do the click thing, you gotta be clever. And I don't like the idea of bringing a laptop, dude. The iPad was starting to get obnoxious. I was starting to forget to charge it. The connections on them are starting to get dated, or they're not. They're updated, but they're getting rid of audio jacks, and it's just a matter of time before, if this iPad shits out on me, or anything like that, that I'm not going to have the same convenience of having a headphone jack with the next one. And I guess the big move to it as well is a buddy was doing the same thing I was doing, and his app crashed and he lost all of his samples. So it's like, fuck yeah, I probably need to look into a better solution than an iPad. So
yeah, and I agree, dude. Like, you can hide a laptop back by a drummer, you can hide them some places, but I do believe, in my opinion, after playing a lot of shows and seeing a lot of bands, like if you have a laptop sitting there, it kind of like, I don't know, I hate to say this, but like it kind of takes it down a notch, in my opinion. And I get the necessity for it. I understand it. I'm in a band where we use one too.
Yeah.
So I get it, but there's something to be said for like not having that right in front of you, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with, like, dude, I think the technology in the DAWs that people are using to switch the effects, if you are kind of one of those bands where you do have some like clean stuff, or you do use different tones, I think the DAW switching stuff is actually really helpful. But a lot of people are using it to play tracks for musicians that don't exist anymore as well. And that's where I feel it's starting to get kind of, I feel like it's cheating a little bit. I've always been the mindset, if, like layering vocals on an album, it's not going to kill you if you don't have layered vocals live, but how much sicker is it to have the members layer those vocals versus if you had like some weird vocal track going in the background to layer? It's going to look more sick if you have the members to fill in those album tricks, right?
Absolutely.
So, like Joe is also a vocalist as well. And he does the backing vocals, and it's nice when we double up on stuff that it's another person. And I kind of feel that way about people who have a third guitar track, where it's like, well, aren't there two guitars there so one keeps the rhythm while the other does the lead? Like, or like maybe you should write the music in a way where the bassist can really hold down the pocket a little bit better. But playing that third guitar track live or playing a second guitar track without a second guitarist, to me, is like, now what's really you and what's really this track now,
Right. And I understand that, and in full honesty, in all honesty, like in our stuff, like we have like a harmony track that's played, but but I'm playing the track, I'm playing those parts myself.
I think Lucas Mann ruined that, man. The whole Rings of Saturn thing, where they were like, oh yeah, you're listening to a third guitar, and and he played it off like that was like him playing this part. So maybe when you're upfront about it, it's not so egregious, but I've always been like, get the members to play the parts personally, but shit, dude.
And there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I'm an old schooler too, dude. And I'm a purist too. And I'm trying not to completely shun technology, but I will say this. I toured with Rings of Saturn a couple of years ago. They were treated me well. They were kind enough to have me come jam with them on stage. They really were playing their parts. And I saw it. And that's from my perspective. And yes, they had a third guitar track playing a harmony part, or sometimes Lucas and Joel were playing the harmonies and the backing track was playing like the rhythm part. And I'm a firm believer though, and I'm sure that most people that I would like to believe that most people that use backing tracks are this way. And if you cannot play it, do not record it.
I'm very much for that as well. It's I just watched the whole thing with Rick Beato on that, like why music seems to be getting worse in quality, not in terms of like EQ, the mix, the tonality part, but just like the creativity behind it. And he went down this whole pack of how, you just get these plugins. If you don't know how to play piano, you get this plugin suite where it does all the chord progressions for you. So you never have to learn an instrument. The human element gets ripped out of it. So, there's so many interesting takes on music, but I like knowing that we're not perfect on stage. We fudge up, dude. We talk about it all the time, but the audience members, as long as they don't, most of them are like, oh, your set was great. You messed up? Really? I'm like, yeah, we were off time here a little bit. You learn they don't catch that stuff. That's all you. You're the only one that's that intimate with your music. So, you don't have to fake out the people with guitar tracks that are perfect. When we record, I listen to things like, I wish that pinch was a little bit better, but I'm not going to have Bob like harmonize, like put a little harmonized synth to hit the right note for me or whatever that they can do. It's like I'm gonna play it till I hit it right, and then if I can't, come back the next day until I can hit it right. So I didn't get that sweep perfectly. Well, I'm gonna just come back and do it again. So I prefer to do that than have him try to pitch correct anything, which I know can be done. I've never had that done on any of my stuff, luckily. So, and I don't want to talk like we put out a million albums or anything, but for my experiences in the studio, I'd rather just sit through it until I get it right.
And I agree with you, dude. And I'm the same way. Like if I'm messing up, I'll sit there until I get it right. And I don't care. I'd rather, and I'm not going to record anything at half speed or slow it down. I'm going to do it the way that it needs to be done. And if I'm struggling to do something, which happens, then I will take the time to make it right. But then like you're talking about like, like live performances and this and that. And it's like, dude, Michael Jordan never made every shot that he took.
Yeah.
Barry Bonds struck out. People that are great athletes or choose your medium of greatness. Gordon Ramsay never cooked a perfect steak every single time. And it's just the way that it goes. And like you had said, dude, like, we're the ones that are judging ourselves the harshest. We're our worst critics. The audience members aren't going to know if we made mistakes unless we let them know. And it's really hard as a musician not to go when somebody says, hey man, that was great, or other bands, or this and that, and going, oh, I screwed up or this and that. I mean, whatever, dude, those little, in my opinion, those times of imperfection are what make art what it is, because art is not supposed to be perfect, in my opinion. And like you said, with AI or with like machines or Rick Beato, like he's right, and there used to be like prerequisites, like you used to be able to have to play. And I went to his studio just the other day, man, and they had an awesome like Steinway $20,000 grand piano, and they were running MIDI files through it just to get in micing it to get the sounds they wanted. While the computer played the parts and the keys on the piano were moving. It was really cool to see, but it was like the performance aspect of it was just like, man, this is just like, just buy the plugin. Why do you need the piano?
You know, it's so interesting that you just brought up sports, because I view extreme metal, as much as it's musical, it does kind of take a little bit. It takes kind of that athletic mentality to, you know, stay proficient at it. It's you gotta practice. You have to rehearse. You have to warm up. You have to go through. Depending on the type of music you play, you might have to go through speed regiments. You know, like speed picking regiments, down pick speed regiments, you know, various finger exercises. Like I said, depending on the amount of speed and dexterity your music takes, you have different warm-ups. So, you know, and not every athlete performs 100%. And we stopped doing that to the audience, like letting them know when we messed up. Well, we've learned to just be like, man, I was a little late on that one part, but we caught up. We'll talk about it amongst ourselves. But then when people like, you had a great show, or your set was great, awesome, cool, awesome. We no longer tell them that we think we messed up, because we found out that, you know, that kills. First off, they probably don't want to hear it. You know, they probably don't care that you think you messed up, and they're already stoked. So why? You know, they know we're human enough as it is. So if they think it was perfect, let them think it was perfect. You know, why shatter their illusion? Oh, now we lost the mic.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Sorry, dude. It's part of the show. Like, that's rock and roll. That's what it is. I remember watching Left to Die, or it wasn't Left to Die, excuse me. It was Living Monstrosity. James Murphy, a huge fan of Death. James Murphy in general, his own stuff, you know, Disincarnate, yada, yada, Obituary, and so forth. But anyway, like, you know, they were having some problems, and things weren't going perfect and weren't going according to plan, you know, and Matt Harvey's on the mic saying, you know, this is a rock and roll show. This is what happens. This is live entertainment. You know, that's why we like it, is because there is a plan, but not everything goes according to plan. And some of the best moments in music history are when things go awry. So I understand what you're saying completely.
So, dude, Dying Fetus rolled through with Despised Icon a handful of months ago. And I believe From Womb to Waist, Trey's spring on his pedal broke. And sure, as much as all of us would love to hear that song front to back, flawless as the album, you know, no interruptions, that, you know, that's something fun to talk about. Like, dude, I saw Dying Fetus, and I talk about my drummer. I was like, how freaky is it that the spring breaks? Like, I've seen guitarists break strings plenty of times, but I've never seen a drummer break a spring live at any death metal show. So that's part of the show. And, you know, and how the rest of the band talk, you know, how they interact with the audience, whether they take a comedic approach, do something, it's part of the show, and that makes it unique. As much as we would love to see, you know, a album quality show front to back, those are the things that make it fun. So human error is part of the art. There's a lot of it to make the songs, and there's going to always be a little bit of it in the performance. Only Necrophagus is perfect.
You know, they're as close as you can get. But that's a testament to their like rehearsal. You know, absolutely, man. But you know, like, it's like drummers, dude. Like sports, drummers in extreme metal are athletes, dude. There's no doubt about it.
And marathon runners, dude.
Absolutely, man. They're running in place. You know, like the hand-eye coordination stuff. Like these guys are gals too. Like these are top notch. You know, these are machines, dude. Gene Hoggle and the Atomic Clock, you know, like it's just crazy, like the dedication that, you know, musicians do put into their craft. But my hat's off to any drummer. They have the hardest job of them all, you know, and if you ain't got good rhythm, you don't have anything. And you know, respect to drummers, dude, for sure.
Well, dude, they could change up so during rehearsal, Mitch will do some funny thing. Like he'll throw ska beats in certain places. And you're listening to it's like it's the same riff and it's in time. But I'm like, God, this changes the whole vibe of the riff completely. So, hats off to Mitchell completely. Mitch is our drummer, of course. I mentioned him earlier. He's been with me since the beginning of what I call the real inception of Wurm Flesh. Because I tried getting this band started in like 2011, like a year after my first daughter was born in 2010. I tried getting this off the ground. I couldn't find the right people. And then one day I have a buddy who breaks up with the band. I'm like, do you want to play this music? He's like, dude, I play like technical progressive metal, but like I'm not that guy. I'm not Blast Machine, but I know one. And I was like, what? And like, where? I only knew of Gabe Sieber in the area. He's like, yeah, this guy Mitchell Botter. And I'm like, okay. And Mitch and me just boom, dude, we're playing brutal death metal. We could do everything from fast groove to shred to semi-tech stuff, and we're like, okay, yeah, this is perfect. This is gonna work. We have the same influences. We have that Slayer Pantera rivalry in the band. Who's he's like, Pantera was way better at Slayer than writing songs. It's like, yeah, but I'm inspired by Slayer, so you're playing Slayer-inspired death metal, sir. So suck it,
dude. And in all honesty, like, Slayer never had like a glam era. I mean, I like Pantera. Don't get me wrong, but if you're going to compare Slayer to Pantera or have that battle, I'm on Team Slayer all the way. I mean, there's no denying it.
They tried doing that early Celtic Frost thing though with the makeup, but beyond in this, and the whole spandex type clothing thing was just that era. But yeah, you're right. They never had a glam era. So, but he's right. When it comes down to it, was Dimebag probably a better guitarist? Yeah. Were Pantera better songwriters in the terms of what songs really are? Having a chorus and things like that? Sure. But, talk to any death metal band. I mean, Cannibal Corpse interviews, like Slayer was the foundation and the blueprint for what made death metal. It was faster. The kick drums were the most driving out of any band for the time. And, it wasn't long for Sepultura to come, Arise was basically right around the corner. Death put out their first album in like 87. So it was only a year after Rain in Blood. But, dude, I can't think of any other band at the time of Rain in Blood that was doing double kicks like that with that kind of production value behind them. So, and people would be like, well, there's tons of bands that were around this time, yada, yada, yada. I was like, yeah, but did they have albums out? Were they still in their demo phase? Like Slayer were on a notable label, heavily touring, with that kind of intensity and ferocity. And like I said, I know Possessed was still around. Possessed didn't just come out and say, oh, God, here's this album, Seven Churches. They were probably playing that music and writing it for several years. Same with Death. They were playing and writing that music for probably a handful of years before the album. So, yes, all that music existed. But, something that was, like I said, already out on the market, then, like I said, Cannibal Corpse and all those brutal death metal bands will attribute Slayer to setting the foundation. So that's the biggest joke between him and I is, you may love Pantera more and not like Slayer as much, but you're playing music that's inspired by Slayer, not Pantera. Because me and Joe are the ones writing the music, and we're more, we are more of Slayer people than Pantera people. So
I hear you, man. And I would say, there's been a few bands that have influenced Pantera, like, like the classic Ex-Hoarder thing, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that whole thing. But like Slayer rules, dude, and like you said, man, they were there towards the beginning, and there were other bands that were more extreme, but like you said, everybody's writing music and been playing that stuff for a long time. So whatever, dude, but it's all good music. It's all good metal. At least we have it to listen to. And
it's all metal, man. If it makes you bang your head, to me, it's good. And it's, sometimes these conversations don't go as healthy, but sometimes it's fun to have the little, well, this band, they were doing this before that. And, sometimes it's healthy to have that little, devil's advocate debate. But beyond that, at the end of the day, I came to rehearsal once with the Cowboys from Hell shirt. He's like, "You own a Pantera t-shirt?" I was like, "Yeah, I own a Pantera t-shirt, dude. Well, what about all that stuff?" I was like, "Bro, I still love Pantera. I just like, ruffling your feathers."
Yeah, exactly. Just to get a rise out of you, man.
Yeah, I just like telling you Slayer's better to see your reaction because it's fun to watch you blow up about how Pantera's better.
Funny, dude. Absolutely good stuff. Rob, thank you for joining me, dude. It's been awesome talking to you. If there's anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up, dude, go right ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if people can still see me, but we have our EP coming out on Comatose Music. It is entitled Teratogenic Malformation. And we have an album that should be coming out early 2025 that will still include these tracks, but a continuation of the topic and storyline. Check us out on Spotify. Please follow us on Spotify. We're late to the game on that one, so my bad. And beyond that, check out our label Comatose Music. Check out all the other sick bands represented by Extreme Management Group. All of our label mates that are on Comatose, and keep your eyes peeled for tons of shows, and hopefully seeing us on the fest circuit in early 25 as well.
Right on, dude. Yes, everybody can see you, and everybody can see the album covers you held up. Your physical copies here. Yeah. Yep. And I'll make sure to put nice. And I'll make sure to put your guys' links in the description of the videos to your Spotify, to your socials, everything like that. So that way everybody can check out your guys' stuff as well as the Arachnid Cabinet stuff. Rob, it's been awesome talking to you, dude. I appreciate you taking the time to do so, and take care of yourself, man.
Appreciate you too, Matthew. Take it easy, dude.
You too, man. Later.
Later.